I do have a great helper. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us again for this really important webinar series. We've been so excited and have had such great feedback. We've had a bunch of people come back repeatedly for the various topics that we've talked about. And we're kind of on the back half now. So this is our fourth topic. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is add value to our clients and nonprofit organizations that are obviously going through some uncertainty, and hopefully things will shake out a little bit here as we go, continue to move into 2021. But today's topic is going to be what we're going to talk about is how to move members from a sitting to a serving board. And Michelle Thomas will be chatting with us today about that information. So I keep saying this, and so it sounds almost like I'm lying, but everybody that has come on, I've known for at least 15 years. So I guess that's a really good sign. These are really credible people that I adore, all of people that I adore. I've actually known Michelle for about 23, 24 years, and she's had a really big impact on me because I've seen her grow in her career. I've seen her mentor people. I've seen her flourish in the various roles that she's had with AT&T all these years. And so it's really a pleasure for her to join me today. Just a little bit about Michelle. She is a high-performing corporate and community leader with strong analytical risk management and advocacy skills, a demonstrated character of integrity and passion for developing others. As the Assistant Vice President Compliance Office, she is currently responsible for programs to drive the risk mitigation and ethical culture within AT&T's accordance with an enforcement of laws, regulations, industries, and internal policies. Amongst other things, Michelle has previously served as a CFO, managing a nearly $4 billion budget and a registered lobbyist, interfacing with federal, state, and local elected officials, business and community leaders. And prior to AT&T, she was a senior tax manager for Ernst & Young and a tax auditor with the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. Michelle currently serves as a chair-elect for the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas, Women of Tocqueville Steering Committee, and on the Advocacy Advisory Committee. She was the 2020 co-chair for the Girl Scouts of Northern Texas, Women of Distinction Luncheon, raising $500,000 in a virtual environment and services. And let me tell you, I was a part of that. It was excellent. For her commitment and service to the community, Michelle received the U.S. President's Volunteer Service Award for 8 consecutive years. And a few weeks ago, the AT&T Dream and Black Future Maker Award. Michelle didn't know I was going to share that slide, but it was so beautiful I had to share it. Michelle received her bachelor's in accounting from the University of Texas at Austin. She's a certified public accountant, a certified compliance and ethics professional, and holds an executive certificate in nonprofit governance from the University of Texas. Michelle and her husband have one son. They reside in Dallas, Texas. I think that if we all had a Michelle Thomas on our board, we would all be thriving right now. So please join me in welcoming Michelle Thomas to our series.
Well, thank you, Mia. Thank you for that great introduction. And it is always nice when we can get together and just talk. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about something that is clearly a passion for both of us. And, I'm glad to be invited to join your speaker series here, the webinar series, where you're looking to really shift the mindset and the thoughts and shift gears with your nonprofit clients. So thank you for inviting me to be here. It is truly my pleasure to share a little bit about what I love to do with you, and just want to make sure you're seeing the slides right. Did I do it right?
We're good.
Okay, good. So, Mia talked, read a little bit of my bio, and clearly from a professional standpoint, I'm a CPA, I'm a certified compliance and ethics professional. I have been a registered lobbyist. Um, I've, worked in a number of different industry, first government, and then a public firm, and then with AT&T. Nowhere in there have I worked for a nonprofit. And so to be able to talk about this topic of serving on nonprofit boards, it really comes from me serving on about 14 different nonprofit boards, whether it's on the board itself, certain advisory boards, auxiliary boards, board committees. But over the course of probably the last 30 years, I have served on 14 different boards. I recall the very first one in my very early 20s. It was the Infant Welfare Society of Chicago. And, it's an organization that is formed to envision a community where children and family are well and doing well. And so I really had a passion for that organization, and to be invited on that board was a true joy and honor to be invited, but to serve was even more important. Tend to not only serve on the board, but I think on almost every board that I've served in an executive capacity. So really holding one of the positions, from vice president, vice chair, president, chair of the organization. So it's important to me not only to engage, but to engage at a pretty high level. I've also served on the National Search Committee for, as we have looked to find CEOs, executive directors for nonprofits. So really trying to find the right people to serve on the board to align with their mission is passion and something that I have done. So, the President's Volunteer Service Award that Mia talked about, I guess I should update my bio because now I've got 9 years. I just received the 2020 award. And that really is just for volunteering. I find myself and call myself really a volunteer, especially when you're working with nonprofits. You're a volunteer. It's not a paid position. So you really need to be able to align what you love to do when you do community service, community work, and that's important to me. So let's jump into this. And when we're talking about a board of directors, you want a high performing board, one that really enables the organization to think strategically, govern effectively, and operate efficiently. That's really what a board is set to do. And this is true for really any board. But today we're going to focus on the nonprofit boards as opposed to a public or a private company, which is a business that is aiming to generate a profit for its owners. So today we're going to talk about nonprofit boards. And because a nonprofit organization exists mainly to provide or help provide resources to a target audience with a specific need or purpose, these are mission-driven organizations. And the management and the board really sets an objective aimed to achieve that stated mission. And so, when you look at that, there are so many great organizations out there for one to choose from. And so the thought process that I go through if I am asked to serve really is pretty consistent every time. We all know that board members should be trusted stewards of the organization's long-term value, and they should, really serve the management, the staff, the clients, and the donors, because those people put the faith in the leadership of the board and expect those members to be engaged and knowledgeable about the needs of the organization. So that's really important from a board perspective. This slide has, the role of the board of directors, and we're not going to go through that because, I think we all know their purpose is governance and oversight, and not the day-to-day management of the organization. That's really the staff that does that. So we're going to focus on the governance and the oversight of the board. But I think in addition to board responsibilities, when we talk about what we should expect from board members, is that they know the mission, the policy, what are the programs of the organization, and they exercise, the duties of care, loyalty, and obedience to that mission for the organization. They need to speak up on legal and ethical concerns. They need to be an ambassador for the organization, which I think is one of the things you kind of wear, not just the title of board member, but you really are an advocate and an ambassador for the organization. It's not just sitting on the board as Mia titled this, it's more, did I go back here? Hang on. There we go. It is, really being prepared for the board meetings, being prepared to participate in the leadership and the governance of that board. And then, one thing I'll touch on the end, I think you need to really commit to the board in making a financial commitment and contribution to the board. Be able to identify and cultivate new donors for the organization. And then ultimately you're volunteer. So how do you serve as a volunteer for the organization? The advantages of that are, any good board, good governance, you're going to have higher board performance. You're going to increase the community's trust in the organization and the reputation of the organization. You're going to be able to provide greater organizational sustainability for your nonprofit. Again, lower the donor's risk. So a donor is willing to invest and to contribute because they know that it has strong governance of the organization that is very focused on the mission of the organization. As I was preparing for this, I went to the Chisholm Consultant website and saw this quote that was on the splash page when you go there. And I thought it was really fantastic. I love this. So organizations can thrive if it has the right people in the right roles. A connection happens when a mission-driven nonprofit is paired with a mission-minded candidate. Building the best teams, one great candidate at a time. And I love that. It's what, Chisholm Consulting does. They really look for the best candidates for placement in the nonprofit. But shouldn't you have that same focus and attention in getting the right people for the board? So everything that's said here, if you just replace candidate with board members, I think that's what, as nonprofits, you really need to focus on. How do we get the right people in the right places to serve the organization well? So as I said, when, anytime I am asked to serve on a board, many times it comes because I've been engaged with that board for a while. Or that organization for a while. But the three questions that I ask myself is, do I have the time to dedicate to this position, this board position? What skills do I have to offer the organization? And am I willing to invest my resources, my personal resources, and that of others into the cause? So it's a matter of time, talent, and treasure. And sometimes you hear about it as, are they willing to invest the work, wisdom, and wealth? And I think that should be the question that every individual asks as they, are asked to serve on a board. But I think it's also the question that the nonprofit needs to ask when they really seek to find someone to sit on that board, because there's so many very worthy causes and nonprofit organizations out there, and we must figure out what's important to each of us. What is the why I spend my time, talent, and treasure with this organization? And what we've all seen, especially through these, this last year and a half, through the various pandemics. And I say pandemics because it's not just COVID, it's, social, racial, political pandemics, is that, people are really looking for purpose and making a difference where it matters most to them individually. There is incredible value in being of service to others. And there's so much work to do. So when you ask yourself these 3 questions, or you ask a board member that you're considering these 3 questions, I think the answer to those questions is what really will help, decide, is this something that I really want to commit my time, talent, and treasure to. So I'm going to step through these, each kind of one at a time, and talk a little bit about my decision-making process, and how I think others should think about it. But, and me, I can't see anything or anyone. So if there are any questions, we want this to be a dialogue, put something in the chat, or we'll certainly have time at the end to have some Q&A. So be thinking about those things.
I just wanted to add here, Michelle, and I know this is how you can, how you think about the boards you're going to be on, but all 3 of them are words that require action, right? Which completely is what we're talking about, not being on a sitting board, but having board members that are willing to work because they believe in what. So I love that these are all words that require action, and I don't know that as boards are formed that everybody thinks that way, right? There's enough strategy in that plan to think about those as individuals, particularly when you get young people that really just want to be on boards to, prop up their resume. But, I think these 3 keys are just so critical.
Yeah, long gone are the days where you just look to someone to have a name on your board. We're all, stretched way too thinly to just say, oh, I just want someone in name. You need someone that's going to put the work in and the time, and has the passion. So, I'll start off with time here. Board members must be able to put in the work necessary to serve the organization. So alignment and engagement are 2 things that I look at when I think about the time that I want to invest in the organization. And so alignment with my passion. So I believe that everyone deserves an opportunity to get a good education, to be able to build and use the skills necessary to earn a fair and sustainable income, and to feel safe and healthy and joyful in doing so. And so I generally focus on causes that are directed at children and women's empowerment, and also uplifting underserved communities, especially the Black community and persons of color. As I said, there's so many fantastic organizations out there. Here is where my passion aligns with where I want to spend my time. 2 organizations, and then you look at the organization's purpose to see if it matches up with that. Right now, the 2 organizations that I probably spend most of my time with, first, the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas. And so their mission is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Sign me up for that. I want that. And then the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. I spent a lot of time with that, as Linda mentioned before, probably before some of you got on. She is the chair for our Women of Tocqueville right now. I am chair-elect, so in July, I will take over as chair. Boy, that's coming up quickly. But United Way's mission, especially the one for Metropolitan Dallas, is they believe that every North Texan, regardless of race or zip code, deserves the opportunity and access needed to achieve their full potential by addressing and the building blocks of opportunity, education, income, and health. Well, boy, that aligns, just, dovetails with what I have a passion for. And so those are 2 organizations now that I spend a lot of time. The Girl Scouts, I don't serve on their board. I actually am on 2 of their board committees. So their audit and risk management board committee, as well as their community engagement, because building girls in all communities is really important. For United Way, not only am I the chair-elect for the Women of Tocqueville, but I'm also on our advocacy committee. It kind of helps. I've got a little bit of background in being a registered lobbyist. So the advocacy is really important, and that's a huge part of United Way. Another reason why I chose, say, United Way is because it's an umbrella organization. So I can give my, can contribute to that organization and know that it's going to touch just a wide myriad of agencies that really align with where I want to contribute and where I want to do good. And so that's my why behind these two organizations now, that I spend a lot of time. Obviously, I want to maximize my time. If it's something that intersects with me being a wife and mother, as well as the work that I do at AT&T, and then what I like to do in the community, that's even better. And many times I look for that intersectionality of purpose so that I can maximize my time. And so that's really important. The board culture is important. What is the belief? What do people on the board what is their focus and how do they get along? How do we collaborate? If I'm going to spend time away from my family or away from my work, I want to make sure that the culture of that board is good. And then the overall community impact is huge. That goes without saying. You want to make sure you're investing in something that's making an impact on the community. On the other side, the engagement. How many meetings do we have? How long are those meetings? If I'm serving both on the board, maybe on the executive committee, maybe on one of the committees within the organization, how much time is that going to take? How much time is it going to take for me to prepare for those meetings or attend the events? Because I just don't want to sit on the board. I want to make sure that I'm also volunteering or participating in the activities of the organization. And how much time does that take? And the one thing that I think also gets overlooked quite a bit is the staff support. And I can say I see Deborah is on this event here, as well as I think I saw Stephanie Mace. Boy, if you don't have the support from the staff that's going to provide the information that you need to be able to make decisions as a board member and or to help advance the events that you're planning, you're putting a lot of time into place. I jokingly say, just from a work standpoint at AT&T, that boy, I'd love my next job to never have to create another PowerPoint. That takes a lot of time preparing, and see, I had to do this for this event. Mia, I really do love you. But if somebody else, there's some support that can do some of those tasks, it helps you to focus on the governance of the organization. So that is really key as I think about the time it'll take to dedicate to the organization. The next thing is talent. And I'm going to part this here a little bit because it unpacks a lot. Mia, you're in the business of recruiting and finding the right candidates for a particular organization. I think, as I mentioned with the quote and that slide previously, that recruiting is really important. And in order to recruit the right people, the right talent to the organization, you really have to look to what is our strategic plan? What is it that, our vision for the organization? And then look at who is currently serving on that board to see where the gaps. Are there skills gaps that we need to fill? Is there something in our strategic plan that says, boy, we really need to have someone that can, be a fundraiser because we've got a capital plan that's coming up? Do I need to have someone with legal skills? I talked about my own experience. So I'm a CPA, which means that, I've served on a lot of audit or finance committees for boards. I'm also a certified compliance and ethics professional. I can tell you crisis or risk management is huge. And for boards, being able to govern well, someone with that sort of skill set is really ideal. One of the emerging things that I'm hearing from boards right now is ESG, so it's environmental, social, and governance, and that's a big concern. The SEC has just come out to say, they're going to be focused on how that organization is contributed back to society or environmentally. And so those sort of skills is important. I also talked about being, and in external affairs and advocacy, a lobbyist. If you need to move public policy, do you have the right skills and the right, people on your board to fill that gap? Or it could be around human resources or cybersecurity, whatever it is, and whatever your organization is focused on. Those are the skills that you want to be able to fill. Again, it's not just who that you want to pull on the board, is what do you need to pull those people on the board. And we've all heard that, diversity in the board is truly important. And it's not just a nice to have or being politically correct. It really is about challenging the same sort of thinking. Long gone are the days where you're like, well, who do you know, or who are your friends you want to be on the board with? That's not going to give you diversity of thought. And you want to be able to have that diverse perspective when you're pulling together your board, so that you can really tease out issues and come to consensus based on different thoughts. One thing that's really important is, does your board reflect the population that you serve? How does it look when you're making decisions as a board and you're not really considering your constituents or your clients or the people that you're serving? One example of this was I was sitting on a board and was focused on women and girls. And we were looking for a new auditor to, do our 990s and all of our financial reporting. And so we had an RFP, we were looking at various firms. There was a firm that came and there was not one woman in the 6 people that they had presenting to us. And I was like, do you have any women in your firm? This is a female focused women's empowerment organization. You've come to us with like, oh yeah, we have women in our firm. Well, no one's presenting to us. So again, when you think about diversity of thought, someone, if you had a board that all looked alike, maybe they were all male, they would not think about bringing in someone to service the organization that reflects the mission of the organization. So that's really important. The other thing that, just the bottom here, and I'm not going to touch on all of those, but I think training the board, no matter if you have someone that's tenured on the board or someone new to the board, aligning around what is our mission today? Should we change it? Is there something that needs to be changed? That strategic planning, whether it's at a board retreat or an orientation or whatever it is, I think is really important. So everyone is aligned around the mission, the vision, the strategic plan for the organization, making sure that everyone has the relevant history and the information on the programs for the organization, I think is important as well. And then just introducing new board members to the rest of the board members and the key staff members is important. I've been sitting on a audits committee for, it's probably been 5 years now. And I went to our first meeting this year and I looked around, I'm like, boy, I know one person. So there were some new people that were coming into the committee that I just had not met. I said, can we just pause a moment and get to know one another rather than just coming to, to make decisions on behalf of the organization. So that I think is a really important aspect of, what we want to do. And then I'll go to kind of the last one on here, the evaluation and succession planning for the organization, which I think is just so important. I talked a little bit about just the tenure of people on the board. And some boards, you keep the same people because they love the organization. They want to stay involved with the organization, but it doesn't allow for new perspectives if you keep the same people on. So there should be some succession planning. One of the things that I love, and again, going back to United Way and or Women of Tocqueville, is we have both a chair and a chair elect. So in my position as a chair elect, I can sit side by side and work with my partner in good trouble to see, what are the decisions that are being made? What are the activities that we need to focus on from a board perspective? And there's that continuum when I take over as chair. Many people don't think about that. And I think that is really important. So either setting term limits so people can roll off, and maybe having an alumni group or a auxiliary board that they're still involved and engaged with the board and you can consult with them, but they're not a sitting board position, I think is important for you to have. So those are some things that you really need to focus on, as well as just the succession planning, even for the CEO or the executive director. How long have they been around? Is it time? And what happens if they just, decide to leave? We need to make sure that we've got a plan in place, because the board's role would be to find the replacement for the executive leadership of the organization. Any questions on that?
Well, I have a thought, Michelle. Well, maybe a question. So, when I look at these characteristics, all of them are just great. But I want to say that to me, they push the envelope, some of these, these boxes that you have up here. Like you said, gone are the days when board members are just sitting on the board and being, not helpful or useful, so to speak. So I appreciate what you're saying here. Again, it's that board needs to be engaged, and they need to question and have good. There needs to be good conversation between the board and the staff, right? And I feel like getting these kind of people, you get that, as opposed to somebody who's just really not that committed to the mission, right?
I agree, and I think, as I said, spending time to ground the board and the dynamics of the board itself really helps, so you can really challenge one another, challenge the different thoughts. And it's not just the fact that someone has been sitting on the board and has all this institutional knowledge that you go along with whatever decisions are being made. There should be some give and take, some push and pull, some really pushing the envelope. That's how you're going to move the organization further. And then, I'll say that not just amongst the board, but also with the staff and management of the organization. That's, again, another way for you to really understand where the organization is going. Do you spend time with the management team outside of a board meeting? That is key to, one, building rapport, but also being able to move the mission along as well.
Right. I think that's a very, very good point, because just having worked in many, many nonprofits, the only time I got to see board members is when they came into town. And, and it was at a dinner, and, we kind of got to interact with them, but they didn't know who we were, what we actually did there. And I think that again, getting buy-in from your board members means they need to know what the people that work in the organization they represent are doing, right? And so I think that, again, is a very, very good point.
I was reading this book, and there are many books and resources out there on how to be a great board member or preparing yourself for board service. And one of the suggestions that Betsy Atkins is her name, and I've got a link to her book on the end. But, she says that anytime she goes in for board meetings, she will set some time, and she'll ask management, ask the CEO or whomever, can I do a mentor circle with some of your top potential, you know, female leaders in the business, just so that they get to know the board member. She gets to hear directly from them. And because a board member does not manage the organization, going through the executive director or CEO to say, would you mind if I spend some time with some of the leaders, not the ones that sit in the boardroom all the time, but those that, you know, you may not know, but they're up and coming in the org. Can I spend some time with them, mentor them, and then also learn from them? I think that is also key to connecting with the organization and really finding out what's going on in the organization as well.
Wow, I don't know about the rest of your slides. I would say that's a key takeaway. You know, to set that time and care about the people that you're interacting with, I think that is critical. So thank you. That we should all write that down.
So the last T is treasure. You know, for those of you that are nonprofit, like, boy, she has not talked about fundraising and bringing dollars into the organization. Don't we need to pull on these heavy hitters in the community to sit on the board for that reason? I absolutely believe that to be a good director, you must be financially invested in the organization. Your wealth is important. But you know, that can come about in many different ways. It can be, you know, my personal donation or contribution. And I do believe that every single board member needs to be financially committed to the organization. So that's table stakes. But are there in-kind contributions that they can bring in? You know, we had someone that worked for one of the accounting firms, and they say, we can provide some assurance to the organization, you know, as an in-kind service. Or there are just so many different talents and things that you can bring to the table without having to pay for that. I think that is key. But fundraising is important. And developing relationship with donors is a key role for the board. So I think it's important to have that as well, and to know that as a board member, that is your responsibility. One of the other things about finding the right people to serve on the board, you know, and people think about, I need someone that's going to have that influence to bring in donors. But think about having those individuals maybe as an honorary chair at a fundraising event versus serving on the board, because they may not have the time to dedicate to board service. But if you have it and a fundraising event and you name them as a you know, honorary chair or an active chair for that event, you can engage people in different ways. It doesn't have to be a seat on the board. So I think that's really, really important. You know, one of the things I say, you know, when I talk about in terms of treasure, you either give it or you get it. And sometimes it's both. You give the, you know, your contribution, you also get it. So how do you solicit others to contribute to the organization? And that's through, you know, your circle of influence. You may not have the resources, or you may have contributed sufficiently, but who in your circle of influence can you also bring into the fold? And it's another role of being an ambassador of the organization, is being able to tell the story, because your mission focus is aligned with the mission of the organization. You're an ambassador, and you're going to bring your circle of influence along. And then using your community connections to be able to reach out to others. And sometimes it's, you know, another board that you might serve on, or another organization that you're involved with. How do you bring those resources together? So yes, treasure is really important. While a nonprofit is organized for public purpose rather than a financial benefit, not having the resources and the funds to serve the constituents, the clients, the group that you're organized to serve is not a good thing. So we want to make sure that we can continue to bring in that fundraising. And I can tell you, and I have one last slide, is the challenges that have come in the past year, um, because of COVID, because of not being able to have those in-person meetings or things just shutting down. You've had to really be creative, and hopefully your board's been really creative. And how do we have even virtual meetings and keeping the board members engaged? How do we have events? I talked about a fundraising event that we had last year. Last year I was asked to chair the Girl Scouts event Mia attended. And my big concern was, how am I going to help bring in the funds that the previous events have done? It's a $500,000 grossing event. So how do I do that? You have to be creative and bring in, move to a virtual setting. One of the things that one of the boards that I sit on is we send packages to the board members' homes, little treats, because normally when you're together for a board meeting, you'd have your board dinner and other things, but send something to the board members that, hey, remember, we've got a board meeting. We want you to be engaged. We're thinking about you. And that's just really made the difference. So we're gonna go into Q&A now. Mia, I think I'm over the time you've allotted me to actually speak. So I look forward to having some questions. And I would like to start off by asking a question. How is your organization shifting expectations for the board members to address these transformational times? I'd love to hear from others as to what they may be doing. What are the emerging things that they're focused on? As they move from, just having a product or a purpose to really social good, because we're also focused on doing good in different ways. Hello?
We're here.
Okay, I was like, did
Everybody's
everyone drop off?
Well, I'll just address the one that you spoke about earlier. Michelle actually invited me to, I can't remember, it was the Girl Scouts, right? And it was such a great event. It was virtual, but it was a phenomenal event. And it made me think, wow, you really can do a great event and you don't have to be there face to face, because I believe you bought a table for 10, right? I will say she had a really good cheerleader at that table. His name is Major Thomas. And he kind of spurred on the donation, and I think he did some matches and he did all kinds of really, fun things. But I thought, wow, this is really great because we got to see the whole event live. But it was virtual, and they still had really excellent speakers. I believe one of them was Cint Marshall. She's the CEO of the Mavericks. And it was just it was great. It was just really a great group of people that spoke. In any case, that was such a great event. And I thought this really can be done virtually. And Michelle said they raised $500,000, which seems just amazing for a virtual event. But again, virtual things can be successful. All right, I have a chat here. Sabrina said, we've begun tailoring individual board engagement plans to each member, that is their own pathways to deepening engagement.
I think that is really good. That's a great suggestion, because one of the things that I attended a session yesterday to talk about, board engagement, because people are, we're all zoomed out. We have Zoom fatigue. And how do you have a 2-day board meeting and keep people really involved? And so when you look at, looking at the individual board member, what committees are they on? What is their skill set? And then tailoring discussions to them, even training. Sometimes you have to tailor the training. If I sit on the HR committee, what is the conversation that I have with that individual? and how does it differ from someone that sits on, the nominating committee? And we've all reduced the time of our board meetings so that we keep people's attention. So not, a 2-hour meeting, but a 1-hour meeting, so that people stay engaged. And it's been a hard thing because there's so much you want to cover, but you really have to, okay, am I gonna capture their attention for as long as I need to trim this down, and the time that you have. And you also want to have some flexibility if people, it's weird, even in this environment. Let me get off mute. Can I speak? I don't want to speak over someone. And part of the great thing about having a board is that board debate and that discussion and dialogue, right? And it's a little awkward to do that over Zoom. And so you've got to think of ways to engage differently with the board.
Yeah.
Linda has a question.
Oh, I was just going to add to, I think, and it's been our experience, I think you'll agree, Michelle, is that during our work with our United Way Women of Tocqueville Steering Committee is engagement can happen in different ways. And so we've had, early conversations about how to engage people, what's their passion, and we're trying to link people up with their passion, knowing that at sometimes during the year, they're going to be more engaged than they are at the other, and learning that everybody's kind of has a part. And if we can find those parts where people, hit their passion and they have the time, based on their other commitments. It's almost like that analysis of a symphony. The violinists may be playing a lot all the time, but, the percussion plays a different part. The cymbals come in at a different time, but they're all critical to that symphony. I think that's the way you need to look at your board too, is, different people may be engaged in different ways, but what is their impact? What is their importance? And does it align with their passion? And you just need to be able to find ways to connect those. And I think it's having those conversations like we're getting ready to have now, talking to people about what they, where's their interest? Where's their passion? What do they have time for? Those kinds of conversations really help to get your board in sync, I think.
Good points, Linda. Linda and I clearly have had some conversation about this.
Sounds like Linda may have helped
Mia,
me
let me ask you this question with respect to the work that you do and your clients that are nonprofit organizations. What are some of the skill sets that they are looking for? I know it probably relates more to candidates to be employees of the nonprofits, but what are you seeing from your clients with respect to having the right people on the board to move the mission forward?
I would say the biggest thing is I actually had a client looking for some more board members not long ago. And they really, I think what it really comes down to is people that are willing to give their time, because, most board members are still working. And so I think it's got to be, it's what Linda said, it's having a mission that they believe in, that they're willing to invest the time. Because it's, without the support of the board, in all these governing areas, it's really hard to move an organization forward. And I would say for an executive director, that board is even more critical to have those partners to work with, right? And so if you have, the old school boards that are sitting and not serving, then it becomes a real issue. And I think that and really, if they're not a partner to the executive director, then how are they going to grow their organization? That's what their job is, the strategy, the governance. And so I think those are all really important things that they're looking for. So time and commitment to the mission, I would say, are the two, which is what you've been talking about. Okay, well, we're coming to our end, and Michelle, thank you so much for taking this time to talk with us. The information was phenomenal. We will share some of that information. I want to tell you at Chisholm Consulting, we are committed to helping your nonprofits find the top talent for your organization. And right now, maybe you're in a place where you really haven't had time to think about that. We are in a new normal, and come the end of the year, who knows what that's going to look like, and your talent may need to shrink or it may need to grow. We're here to really help you find those people. This whole webinar series was really to add value to each of you and your organization. So if we can be of help to you on any role in your nonprofit, whether it be communication, we're actually working with one organization and we're doing communications, we're doing membership, we're doing development, we're doing multiple roles for them, and we're having success in all of them. And so please let us know how we can help you. That we just want to provide you with the best talent that's out there. So you can also find us on www.chisholmconsulting.com, and you can reach out to me directly there, and our team will be happy to reach out to you within the next day or so. Again, we will forward the slides that Michelle shared, and I would send it all to your development people and your fundraising people. I think they all need to hear this, and your executive directors. Don't forget to send it to them too, because a lot of times they're so busy that it's hard to, right now especially, get out from underwater. So please share this information. I think it's so important and critical to your organization. So thank you. Join us again next Wednesday at noon. We're going to be talking about human resources and kind of the critical matters that we're facing there, especially with all the pandemics that Michelle was talking about. There's a lot of conversation. I think it's going to be a very important conversation. So come back and join us next Wednesday, and thank you for taking time today. Have a great Wednesday.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks. Good to see you, Mia. Excellent job.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Great job, Michelle. Bye.